Greetings there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Lord Virgilus, and I'd like to actually talk about a first impression on a game that I played just pretty much today. And that game is Pandora's Tower. The game is, well, part of the Operation Rainfall, which consists of 3 games. Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. This is the last one, which finally made it over to North American shores, which I'm really glad to see. Now, I have played the Xenoblade Chronicles. I liked it, but it seemed a lot bigger, and it kind of overwhelmed me a little bit, so I do need to go back to that. The Last Story, I have to say, kind of disappointed me, seeing that it was by the creator of Final Fantasy. I was expecting big things, and it didn't really deliver, but I will probably be going back to that. So I didn't really know what to expect coming into this one, which is Pandora's Tower. I do have to say, I only played about an hour or 2 into it, but I do have to say that it is rather a little disturbing on parts. Mainly, the eating of the flesh is a little on the disturbing side, but not very uncommon, especially on the Wii. Like, you don't expect that stuff on the Wii, but let's talk about gameplay with at least the first 2 towers you go to, because that's all I've done so far. Actually, before gameplay, let's talk about the characters. The characters are, we got Arion. I think that's what his name is. Arion. Yes, Arion. That's the main guy. That's the thing. You're kind of just thrown into this world, and you don't really know who these characters are. Because you got Arion, you got Elena, and you got this other kind of weird person. It's like a merchant / I think witch type of thing. And I can't actually get the name, and I don't even have the name with her. But nevertheless, you're thrown into this game, and you're like, okay, well, I gotta go to these towers to get monster flesh for the girl who's cursed, and if I don't do that, she's gonna turn into a monster herself. Okay, that's all I can basically say right to that, like that. So that's what you do. You go to these towers over this like big crater that's called the Scar. Apparently, over this big thing is just big bunch of chains to this tower in the middle. It's supposed to be 13 towers, but even though it looks like 1, so I'm not too sure what that is. But visually it looks pretty damn good for a Wii game. Like, really, I'm very thoroughly impressed by the visual style. It looks pretty damn good. Hence, Xenoblade looks pretty good, and even Last Story looked pretty good too. So visually, I have nothing to complain about. Music's pretty good. Characters, even though you're thrown into the characters do kind of grow on you a little bit. Like, the whole, I think, cliche of this game is basically you gotta care for the girl. It's not like the girl doesn't do anything. She actually does things for you. Stereotypical stuff, but nevertheless, she's not like a helpless damsel in distress that doesn't absolutely squat. She actually helps you in your quest to help her, basically. So, basically going down to the story is, so far, okay. It is quite interesting, because when you go back, because you go to these towers, and you're supposed to go to the Master, and get the Master Flesh, and bring back to her, and that weakens the curse on her. But if you don't do that, you can go to Servant's Flesh and bring that back, and just temporary refills the clock on her changing until you can go there and actually kill the boss or the master of the tower. And during those times where you have to go back before you pretty much go through the tower, I think there's at least random, because it happened to me. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. Is that she's in obviously different places doing different things. It's not like she's just there and you just go back and, oh, well, eat this thing, basically. She's actually doing stuff. She's singing. She shows that she's an actual character doing something, instead of just waiting for you, basically. She's actually doing something. You give her stuff to do. She does translating text. She sews. She makes things for the place that you're in. Like, it's it sounds simple, it sounds like, why are you doing this? But it adds little touches to the game that, I don't know, it just seems a little right, I have to say. While you're going out and basically trying to help her, she's not just standing there doing anything, she's doing things. And the thing is that depending on when you go back, if you're almost ran out of time, she retreats to the cellar where she doesn't want to be seen. Makes sense. She's like almost a monster. Clearly shown that she's almost a monster. It's like, here, have a flesh, boom. She reverts back to being a human for temporary purposes. And if you come back and she's only partially transformed, then you clearly see that she's partially transformed. And other than that, I have to say it's been a... I would say it's slightly... I don't know, I was going to say it's slightly better than... Well, it's obviously better than... For story-wise, it's better than the last story. I haven't really got too much into the last story. But I haven't got too much into Xenoblade either. But I hear Xenoblade's the better one. But so far, I'd say Pandora Tower is probably the better out of all three, because it kept my attention the most right now. And it's not just because of the story. Now we're getting into the gameplay. The gameplay is if anything I can actually think, it's a mixture between Zelda and Castlevania, 3D Castlevania. Because it reminds me of Castlevania a lot, but it also reminds me of Zelda a lot. It's like, just imagine Link had a whip. Not like the one he has from like Skyward Sword, but like a whip from like Castlevania. I'm trying to think. I haven't played Lord of Shadows. Limited Innocence, Leon's whip. It's kind of like that, but not, because you can actually use it more than just a whip. You can like whip the things to go to different areas, or you can just use the whip as basically hitting enemies. And the greatest thing is that you can use this, well, it's a chain actually, not a whip, but it reminds me of a whip. That's why I'm saying a whip. But you can just straight up hit the enemy, or grab them and then like flip them around, or, you know, hit them, and if there's more than enemies, hit them together, bring those two together so they actually pretty much can't go anywhere. Or you can just pretty much hit them twice to pretty much kind of stun and lock them a little bit for a short period of time until the chain breaks and then goes back to you. It's an unbreakable chain, but still, there's a lot of mechanics that keeps it a little interesting, I would say. But I have to say, a lot of the bosses, the two bosses that I came to so far, I had really no idea how to do them, but it involves the chain, basically. Which brings me back to the tutorial. The tutorial didn't really explain a lot of stuff good. It didn't show you or anything. Kind of reminds me of old school stuff, where basically it kind of tells you how to do it, but it doesn't really show you. It doesn't only hold your hand through it. Just basically, you do this, you're shown how that you know what buttons to press, and you're supposed to do it on yourself. And through about most of the first tower, I didn't even get the mechanics down until almost the boss, basically. And then the second tower, I kind of was a little bit easier because I understood the mechanics a little better. That's pretty good. Like, you get different weapons, and the inventory for weapons is reminds me of Resident Evil 4 item management, where you have like a grid, and you're supposed to fit your equipment in the grid. And if you don't have room, you don't have room. You can't equip that weapon or the piece of armor or so forth. There's a lot of mechanics in the game. Item combining, where you combine two items for another item, like alchemy. At first, it's kind of overwhelming, but even 2 hours into the game, I kind of got it. It's like a little bit like new stuff comes up, and I don't know all the combinations basically. But hey, you don't. It's not like right over your top like Legend of Mana type stuff. Basically, I do have to bring this up, is that I don't really like timed, like you have to do something in a matter of time, or you're going to basically get game over. So basically, if you do not give Elena any kind of flesh and the time runs out, you got a little timer in the bottom left corner, she basically turns to a monster or a beast or whatever you want. I think they're called beast, and the game's over. Now, normally I would not like that, but this, first of all, not kind of clear of what you obviously have to get beast flesh, but what kind of beast flesh? Because you get various kinds. Obviously, the more fresh it is, the better it is to recover with, basically. I don't know, it just seemed like I was going back a lot. When I get Beast Flesh, I go back, and right away I didn't know how much time I had to go up that tower until I basically say, okay, well, I'm halfway through the tower. There's about a quarter left of time, but I have enough time to go all the way down to the tower because I have Beast Flesh, obviously, going up the tower, and get enough time to actually go back to the place and give her that flesh, or am I going to run out of time going halfway down? So I found myself going back a lot more at the beginning, and then I realized, well, I have a hell of a lot of time, especially if I find the best kind of beast flesh that's not master flesh, basically, and give it to her, and she's like, we're pretty much back to normal, like, until I get the master flesh to her. But overall, I have to say, other than some slightly disturbing scenes, every time you give her some flesh, you see her eat it, and I don't know, that could be a slight disturbance to a few people. I'm just I'm a tad disturbed by that. But other than that, the game has been holding my attention pretty good, actually. So it reminds me of, like, what 3D Castlevania probably should have been, actually. Like, Remnant of Innocence is good. Curse of Darkness, obviously, didn't have a Belmont. Well, did have a Belmont, but I didn't get that far and didn't really hold my interest enough to actually care if I had to play the Belmont or not. And obviously I didn't play the Lord of Shadows or Lord of Shadows 2 or something like that. But from what I hear, it's not like this. This kind of reminds me of what Castlevania probably should have been like. And hell, even Zelda probably could take like a little bit out of this too. Once you actually get the hang of it, the controls, it's pretty smooth moving. Especially if you have like the nunchucks and the Wii remote. You can play this on classic controller, and I found I was going to do that because I want to be hardcore and stuff, but I felt it was a little so I went back to the Wii remote, and it's fine. I had no problem with it. It's a little bit better. It's better reaction time for doing things. But so that is pretty much my first impressions on Pandora's Tower, and I have to say, so far, so good. It's a good game. So I will probably give my second impressions as I go through more of the game, like probably when I pass the, let's see, out of 13 towers, probably like 8 or 9 towers, I'll probably come back and make an impression, see if my impressions are still yay or nay, and then after I pass the game, I'll give my final thoughts on it. There we go. So, I don't know, this is kind of like a miniature review, but it's kind of an impression videos, more of an impression video. Until the next video, I will see. No, that's my. Until the next video, this has been Lord Virgil saying farewell. Good night.